San Diego's highly coveted taxi permits are public property, but they are sold on an underground market tax-free for as much as $160,000 in cash.
It's a very corrupt system, so they don't take check, they don't take money order. They just require cash, large bill, and then you have to drop 7-Eleven, some liquor store, some garage.
Fred spoke to KPBS on the condition of anonymity for fear he will be retaliated against by cab companies and other drivers. He says he has purchased and sold several permits on the private market over the last decade. When a permit changes hands, it's called a transfer. The person receiving the permit just has to pass an eligibility check and pay MTS a $3,000 fee. But behind the scenes, Fred says huge sums of money are changing hands between the person turning over the permit to MTS and the person receiving it. The transfers have left San Diego Mayor Bob Filner perplexed.
Why should you be able to transfer to anybody else at highly inflated prices? If you're not going to use it, give it back to the city.
Public documents show MTS is aware of the shadow market. In fact, a 2010 study commissioned by the agency states that, quote, profit-taking has occurred on a grand scale in San Diego's taxi market. The report says MTS has the authority to stop the practice and require that permits be surrendered to the agency and reissued through a process with more governmental control. KPBS attempted to ask MTS why it allows the transfers, but the agency refused to grant a recorded interview. In an email, spokesman Rob Shupp said, quote, our board has not considered the specific issue of permit transfers and therefore has no position on the subject. In the 2010 study, however, the MTS consultant wrote that the sale of these permits encourages taxi owners to invest in their businesses and cars. The report also credits such transactions with creating an opening for newcomers into the taxi market. It concluded, quote, there is no compelling public interest that would be served by disallowing permit transfers. Cab driver lawyer Bob Glazer says the opposite is true. Permit transfers and the parallel sales on the hidden market are hurting consumers and cab drivers.
If a driver has to pay $150,000 just to get into business, well, they're going to keep their rates as high as they possibly can.
San Diego has some of the highest cab fares in the country. Expensive permits also mean drivers who can't afford to buy one must lease instead at costly rates, sometimes paying more than half of their earnings to cover those rates. The root problem, according to insiders, is a shortage of permits. In the city of San Diego, 993 permits are held by 418 individuals and cab company owners, according to MTS. Meanwhile, there are 1,850 licensed cab drivers. Since 1989, only 125 new permits have been issued, according to agency documents. Glazer says it's a system that drives up the price of permits by keeping them scarce.
There'd be no need to sublease if everybody could get a license. There'd be no need to buy or sell licenses on the black market if everybody could get a license.
A San Francisco city agency is trying out a program for buying and selling taxi medallions. The city of New York buys and sells taxi permits. They are also sold there in private auctions. San Diego's USA Cab Company co-owner Alfredo Hueso says he's in favor of local government taking a bigger role in the sale of permits.
We've actually have approached policymakers on that many times, and they've been not interested in that issue.
Meanwhile, MTS may lose its oversight of San Diego's taxi industry. Mayor Filner says the city is exploring taking control of regulation after scores of complaints from drivers and passengers about the way MTS is running the system.
I think it's been lax. That's why we're going to take it over. They've allowed this black market situation to develop without any oversight.
But the city has its own history with taxi regulation. In 1970, then San Diego Mayor Frank Curran and several members of the city council were arrested and accused of taking bribes from a cab company owner. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.